Hey everyone, Peter here. Welcome back to my channel and thanks so much for tuning in. If you're new here, you can check out my other posing videos for various hot toys that cover best practices and safety tips for displaying your figures. But today, we'll be going over a highly requested topic, and that's how to remove and modify the inner padding for Beskar Mando to improve his posability while also maintaining some of his original form and function. Now, there are a few videos done in real time for the original version of Mando, so the removal process might be familiar to some. However, I've also included the actual body modification process and cut out the excess footage in order to highlight just the important steps for your viewing pleasure. Now, as usual in my tutorials, the editing might be a bit fast, so feel free to pause or go back as needed. Now, it's worth mentioning that Mando is quite posable with the inner padding fully intact, so modifying him isn't really required for the casual collector. However, I still prefer it since posing him was a bit troublesome, especially when trying to raise his arms to the desired height. It felt like the suit was going to tear at the shoulder if I pushed too hard, and modifying the padding tremendously improves articulation, thus making it a lot easier and overall more fun to pose Mando. And so, jumping right in, once we've removed any loose items and accessories, we can begin the take apart starting from the head down. Then we can remove the shoulder pads by peeling them off out the Velcro patches. Next, we can remove both hands in order to slide the gauntlets off at the forearms. As we move down, we can simply peel off the Velcro armor plates at the thighs. Now heads up, the side panels at the waist are attached to the belt using Velcro, however removing them is not required, so we can leave them as is. And moving further down, we can remove the boots by pointing his toes all the way up until they pop off, followed by pulling the shin guards off his legs. But be mindful that the one with the ammo cartridges belongs to his right leg, while the one with the small pouch goes with his left leg. Now, like most of his suit, the belt and shoulder harness are also attached using Velcro, so we'll want to raise his arms up to the side for better clearance when peeling it off. Once we've made it all the way around the waist, carefully lift the shoulder harness over his neck towards the right side of his body. We'll want to be sure to remove it slowly because the Velcro on the belt can get stuck to the cape or suit, and any rough movements could damage the entire harness, so be careful. Once we've got that out of the way, we can move along by removing the Velcro backplate and body armor. Now, it's worth mentioning that his chest plate in particular is a separate piece from the abdomen, and we'll want to remove it safely by peeling it upwards from the bottom in order to avoid scraping it against the lower plate. However, if the cape starts to unravel around the neck like mine did here, then be sure to reattach it at the corner of the Velcro first before moving on. The cape does not need to be undone for this process, and keeping it attached will save you the trouble of figuring out how to fold it over properly during reassembly. Also, the lower plate does not need to be removed either, and will actually help with proper alignment during reassembly. Now moving along, we can slowly lift the cape over his neck while keeping it attached. Then open the vest at the back by peeling yet another layer of Velcro. Once that's done, simply raise the arms forward to easily slide it off the body. Next, we can remove the final piece of Velcro armor before moving on to the fabric suit. Once that's done, we can easily pull the pants off as there is no stitching nor elastic straps that hold it in place. But when it comes to his long sleeve, be careful when unzipping the back. It is delicate and can become jammed or even break, so it helps to press down on the fabric as we slowly work our way up the zipper. Now heads up, removing the long sleeve has the highest risk for damage since it can stretch the fabric to its limits, so we'll gradually want to move his arms up as we carefully slide it off. And that's pretty much it for the main take apart. All that's left now is to remove the actual padding from the body. All we gotta do is take a pair of scissors or wire cutters and simply cut the one single stitch towards the back of the neck. Doing so allows us to unravel the long thread that holds it all together. Once that's done, simply raise the arms forward again to slide the padding off the body. And there you have it, the inner workings of a Hot Toys figure. Now, if you're going through this process and this happens to be your first time holding a bare figure body, then I'd highly recommend experimenting with its full range of articulation by trying various poses that you'd normally be hesitant to attempt. It might look silly, but practicing with an unhindered figure will only help you become more familiar with its limits and potential, and it's what I did to gradually improve my posing throughout the years. In any case, before we move on to modifying the padding, it's worth mentioning that small pieces of paper towel or tissue can also work for this next part if you don't want to damage the padding. Alternatively, there are plenty of other ways to modify a figure using EVA foam or modeling clay, but if you've seen my other videos, then you'll know I try to keep things quick, easy, and fairly practical using the tools that we have at our disposal. And so, if it's all the same to you, we can begin by cutting the forearms at the top of the circular hole just below the bicep. We'll be using the forearm pieces to help prevent the gauntlets from sliding around, thus keeping them in place. Next, we can cut off the legs just below the circular hole, and we'll be using these to fill his pants so they're not all loose and super baggy. Now, when it comes to the upper torso, we can set that entire piece aside since we won't be using it for the remainder of this video. However, you can always modify it to your own liking as well. Now, at this point, you can choose to reattach the entire leg piece as it is. However, I personally chose to modify it even further by cutting the thigh to allow for better articulation. If you do follow along, then be sure to remove the excess padding around the knee as well. Then, simply repeat the process with the other leg using the original pieces as a cutting guide. Once that's done, we can begin reattaching each piece accordingly, but we'll also want to adhere them to their designated areas using tape in order to keep them in place when we reassemble the figure. And so what I did was simply wrap the tape around the top or bottom where the padding overlaps the body, but be mindful not to cover the joints with the tape. Now, this might look pretty shoddy and half-assed because, well, it kinda is, but I figured that the body was going to be fully covered anyways, so I didn't really care how it looked. As always, do what works best for you. And so, once we've got the padding affixed to the legs, we can do the same to the forearms. Now, when it comes to proper alignment, be mindful not to cover the elbow joint with tape. It helps to adhere the padding so that it just about lines up with the wrist joint without spilling over. And once again, I left out the entire torso and upper arms so that his long sleeve shirt would be less restricted and move more freely. And that's pretty much it for the body modifications. All that's left now is to reassemble the figure in reverse order, starting with the long sleeve shirt. Now, although it'll be easier reassembling Mando with most of his inner padding removed, we'll still want to take things nice and slow to avoid detaching the affixed padding from his limbs while also preventing any damage to his outfit. And so, once we've got his shirt all nice and snug, we can then put his pants back on. However, we'll want to pull them up pretty high in order to tuck his shirt in properly so that it doesn't spill out while posing. Once that's done, we can reattach his lower torso body armor, but be sure to align it so that the rear flaps are sitting just above the horizontal stitching on his pants. Otherwise, it'll sit too low below the belt once reassembly is complete. Next up is the chest plate and cape, so we'll want to raise his arms forward to slide it onto his body. And remember how we wanted the cape to remain attached to the Velcro? Now we can simply place the cape over his neck without worrying about how to properly wrap or fold it around his body. Then we can use the lower chest plate to properly align and reattach the upper chest plate, followed by the back plate as well. Once that's done, we can bring in the shoulder harness by carefully looping it over his right arm and neck. Also, be sure to pull the cape all the way through the back side of the harness before proceeding to wrap the belt around his waist. Now that the hard part is over, we can move on to his limbs by reattaching both shoulder pads, followed by the gauntlets and hands. And moving on down, simply place the thigh armor onto their corresponding legs. Now, when it comes to reinstalling his shin guards, holding the pants in place helps to prevent the fabric from bunching up at the knees. Next, we can plug his boots back into their sockets. All that's left now is to throw on his helmet and allow him to practice his religion. Simply slide his blaster into its holster, reattach the sticky bomb to his belt, connect his Anben rifle if you choose, and this is the way. Granted, he might not look nearly as buff or full-bodied, which is a valid concern that some collectors may have, but, as mentioned previously, you could always add the padding onto the biceps and chest if you want to. And so, as you can see here, moving his arm up high posed no problem at all, especially compared to before, and that's because the long sleeve now has so much more wiggle room to breathe. But there you have it, a fully loaded and modified Beskar Mando, or Durasteel Mando if that's the figure you used. And hey, if this was your very first figure modification, congrats! As usual, I hope you enjoyed this video or perhaps found it insightful. If you did, feel free to show your support with a thumbs up, and let me know in the comments if you plan to modify your Mando and which version of the figure you'll be using. I'm curious to know. Also, I want to take a moment to express my utmost gratitude to you, the viewers, as we just hit our first milestone together of 1,000 subscribers on the channel. Now I know I say this a lot in the comments and direct messages, but saying it each time doesn't make it any less true. I really appreciate all your love, support, and positive feedback, as it truly motivates and inspires me to continue making this type of lighthearted, informative, and hopefully entertaining content, and knowing that I've had some kind of positive impact on your collecting journey is both a privilege and an honor that I don't take for granted, so thank you. Now, I do have a lot more content on the way, but for full transparency, life outside the hobby will be ramping up, so there may be a bit of a slowdown in videos on my channel, but they are coming. I'll continue posting sneak peeks on Instagram at posingwithpeter16. In the meantime, be sure to check out some other awesome posing videos across the community, like Justin's Collection, where he has a brand new dedicated posing series on his channel, Dante from Manahawk Collectibles, who also has some really creative and original pose ideas for early releases, and a collector who needs no introduction, Ryan from Jedi Patrol, who has super crisp and clean footage of some of your favorite hot toys. And lastly, if you're on Facebook and want to say hi, then come join me at 6th Scale Network or 6th Scale Posers, which is a really fun up-and-coming group of passionate posers that are welcoming to collectors of all skills. Either way, that's all I got for now. Thanks so much for watching. Please stay safe, take care, and we'll see you in the next video.